All right, Kevin, back with you for another episode of the $1,000,000 Relationships Podcast. And Pam, I didn't actually ask you, how do you pronounce your last name? And I should have done that before, but I didn't. But how do you pronounce your last
That is completely fine. It is Pam Nemec. It's
name?
spelled Nemec, so I can understand. Everyone says Nemec, but
Uh-huh.
it's actually Nemec.
Well, so that's what I was thinking that it was, but I just
Yeah,
wanted to make sure. So I'm
I,
glad that
I will answer. I will answer to either.
So, well, I want to start by giving a shout out to the folks over at the podcast guest platform, and specifically Jessica. I mean, I feel like Jessica, since well, it probably took me, I don't know, about 40 or 50 episodes, and Jessica started reaching out to me because she's like, "Kev, I really like what you're doing with your podcast," and ever since then, now she just sends me emails and says, I think here's somebody that I should think you should interview for your podcast, and she has
So nice.
never steered me wrong.
That's
And
awesome.
and that's how you and I met, and I'm just like so incredibly grateful for her, for the folks at that platform, and it has just been an amazing experience. I just want to honor Jessica again. And Pam, what I'd like to do is just kind of start off is I want to turn it over to you, so we can start by setting a little bit of context, and you
Mhm.
can talk about what you do, who you serve, what inspires you most about the work you do, and the impact you're making. We'll just start there and give the listeners an idea of who you are and what you're all about.
All right. Well, thank you first of all for having me on, and thanks Jessica for connecting us. That's awesome. So yeah, I think I'm going to give you the bottom line. What I really do is I help CEOs take all of the leadership advice they've ever heard, all of the they go to these conferences, they get all this advice from various mentors, and they all want to figure out a way to be a better leader. I have
Mhm.
learned that they all have the heart to be a good leader. They want that, but the CEOs are really busy,
Yeah.
and they're so busy that sometimes they don't even have time to build the relationships that they need to create the connections that would actually move their business forward. And so, and the communication systems that you need to have in place to be able to do it. So, I have created a system that activates those traits and those behaviors that leaders want to have, but don't have time to focus on because they're busy
Okay.
running the bigger business. And
Okay.
so that's what I do. I help them really activate the behaviors that they need to have to create a great culture that then becomes a competitive advantage. So that's my bottom line, that what I do now. To give you a little bit of background on
Yeah.
me, I just in 2021, I left a 20-year corporate career with a multi-billion-dollar restaurant brand out of
Okay.
Texas, and I really I loved working for that company, and I learned a lot. Before that, I worked for nonprofit and was a fundraiser for various organizations, and so just through all of that, I just learned a lot of great lessons, and what I love doing now is really helping people, helping leaders create great companies that people who work for them feel proud to work for. And
Yeah.
so that's really my passion now. And I think that that's done through relationships. I think it's also done through a few systems so that that you're held accountable to that culture that you say you want to create. So that's kind of where I'm at these days. And like we were talking about right before we started this podcast, Kevin, is I was listening to your podcast before I came on as a guest, and just to understand um, where other guests are coming from. And what I realized really quickly is I was very fortunate that I came from a background where my family, I grew up in a really small town in South Texas.
Mhm.
um, my mom and dad were married for 53 years till my dad passed away. He was 82. He passed away of cancer. But I have two sisters and a brother. We are as close as can be, and friends to this day. And I realized that in listening to the podcast and listening to other guests, some people have had such a struggle in their life and have been through so much. And I just I felt for them. And I guess in my upbringing, I mean, I'm in a small town. I mean, we used to catch literally lightning bugs in a jar and keep them by our bed for a nightlight. We would have, go to church every Sunday. We played until the lights came on at night. And we ran home and we heard mom yelling. I mean, it was that kind of an upbringing. And we always sat around the dinner table at night. And I thought that was normal. I thought that's what everybody did. And it wasn't until I went to college and I met other friends of mine who shared their stories, and I realized that not everybody has that, and not everybody has been raised around those kind of values and that kind of that having had that kind of upbringing. And I think what I've really realized as I reflect on my life is I think that my childhood and really all through high school, I stayed in the same town. That childhood really set me on a path to the type of leader I wanted to be.
Okay.
And those values that I learned way back when, I've now looked back and I go, that's why I was such a good fit for that company. That's why I wasn't a fit for this one. That's why I was really connected with this leader. And that's why I really didn't connect with that other one. And I realized that that's kind of a thread that I think runs in our leadership style, whether we realize it or not. And so now I think that if I could do anything with my life, it would be to show people that maybe in this complex, disconnected world we live in, although we're technologically connected more than ever, that maybe if we could get back to simple times, relationships, integrity, honesty, kindness, we might find the answer to a whole lot of problems within our companies and within our communities. And so that's my, I guess, passion behind everything that I do, is that I want to bring people to a table, right? Yeah. I want to help leaders set a table that others want to be at and others want to be around and want to be associated with. And so just like that table that I sat around with my siblings every night, I think that's what I'm trying to help other leaders build, is what table are you setting in your company? Yeah. And do people want to be around it? Do they want to eat with you every night? Or are they thinking, I think I'm just going to go get a burger down the street? Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I think that's, and everything that you're building, Kevin, and everything that you're doing is in essence about that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's so interesting that we're talking about, and I had the same kind of upbringing as you. All the stuff you described, sitting around the table as a family every night, at 5 o'clock, dinner was ready. And I knew, when I get home from school, I go do whatever, go play with my friends, but 5 o'clock, be home for dinner. And after dinner, I could go back out until the streetlights came on. Then it was time to come home again, Yes. Yes. And this dinner table, and that, because I have, long felt that I don't accept anybody as a client that I wouldn't invite into my home for dinner with my family.
There you go.
And many of the people that I work with, they have been in my home. And and this whole thing about what you're talking about is shared core values.
That's it.
And when you get everybody together in an environment who has those shared core values, because I've done this hundreds of times now, where you get those kind of entrepreneurs together who have those shared core values and have a certain outlook on business. They'll get together and nobody knows each other. And yet, in my case, 2.5 hours later, they're all exchanging contact information, wanting to do business together, wanting to refer business to, and it happens every single time because of that piece, of that shared value piece, and that they have a similar outlook on business. Yeah, no.
That's it. And
And
I think that the other thing that I teach and I encourage leaders to do is don't be afraid to establish the kind of culture, really define and establish the kind of company culture that you want. And it goes back to those values, right? What are your values? And
yeah,
here's the good and the bad. That's going to attract the people that share those values. It's going to make them want to come sit at your table, and it will repel those that don't.
that's right.
And that is okay. And I think that we need to give leaders permission to say, it's okay. You
Yeah,
have to know who you are.
that's
Who
right.
you are is so important to building a brand and building one that lasts and can sustain growth and can scale. But if you don't know who you are, and you are just picking up the cues from the random people that might come and go out of your life, you're going to look up one day and you're not even going to know, one, who you are, or two, what your company is supposed to be about.
Yeah,
And so I just believe that it is critical to say, this is who I am, and I'm unapologetically, this is what I want to stand for, and this is what I'm about, and these are the behaviors I expect and I want to see in the organization, and these are the things that I want to see lived out,
yeah,
and this is the legacy that I want to leave in my life, and this is the platform I have, and this is the way I'm going to use that platform.
yeah,
And once you get so clear on that, it is easy to invite people to your table.
yeah,
It is easy
yeah,
to know who's welcome and maybe who needs to find another table.
yeah, yeah,
And so I just think it's really such a simple concept, but it is a step that a lot of leaders skip. They think, well, I created a vision statement for my company, so I'm done. But really, it's about thinking about, how do you want your people to support that vision statement?
yeah,
What does that look like? What
yeah,
are the behaviors you want to see? What are the relationships you want to see formed? How do you want that to look and feel in your company?
yeah.
Um,
Well, and then
I,
when they have those shared core values with us, they're going to be all on board for that
yeah,
too. You know?
yeah. I just attended an event. I'm a member of a group in Nashville, and I just attended a training up there a couple of days last week. And I actually wrote a blog about it after I left, because I was so impressed and really moved by, I was there to train, and I did. I got all kinds of great tips and tools and all of that stuff. But what I really walked away with was this sense of, here I was sitting there and I was experiencing exactly what I teach. They had created an amazing brand, this remarkable brand that I could feel, and I could sense what the owners and the founders were all about. I could sense it as a customer of and a client of theirs. And and I knew, because I know the strategist that works with me and many of the other people that work in the organization, they have built that from the inside out. They would not have the remarkable brand they have today had they not taken great care of the people that are representing them. And it was literally, and I wouldn't be experiencing that as a customer
Yeah,
if they hadn't done that.
that's
And so
right.
it was so authentic and it was so real and it was remarkable. And I really walked away with this sense of, this is what I'm talking about. I got to experience that on a large scale when I worked for Whataburger, but I got to see it on a smaller scale. And I was like, that's it.
Yeah,
That's what people need to do. Because
yeah,
if you do it, just like I'm trying to preach to the world, I'm like, I promise you it works,
yeah,
right? You want that performance. I know you need to hit those numbers. I get it all, but you got to take care of your people. And there are systems for that. If you're not naturally good at it, create a system. Make sure you do it, because it's that important to your performance. And I got to see it firsthand last week, and it was so cool. It was so cool
yeah,
to watch it. And I just, was, I was grateful that I was there.
yeah, yeah. Wow. Well, okay. So now this was really powerful. So, okay. So now we've got a little bit of context set here.
Mhm.
I am going to reiterate the question for the benefit of our listeners. So, Pam, have you ever been introduced to a person or persons that completely changed the course of your life or your business, so much so that much of what you have today would not be possible if not for this person or persons? And Pam, I'm just like really excited to hear your story and your experience around this topic of relationships.
Yeah. So, boy, this is I love this question. And because I had to think on it. I've had so many great people in my life, mentors in my life, and unexpected gifts come along,
Yeah.
right? From in the form of a human. And then I've had people that were not such a gift, but turned out to be somebody that did put me on the better path, put me on a path that I would not have been on had they not been maybe not the nicest, you
Yeah.
know? So I think I have to acknowledge, of course, my mom and dad were the foundation. They set me on the best path, my
Okay.
family, all of that. But when I think about my real career and how it shifted on me, I owned a business for a while. When I was a new mom, I had two children, and I started a small business called it was called Signature Socials, and it was a
Okay.
meeting and event planning business where I helped companies market their business through creating events. It was fun. I loved it, but it was just something that I could kind of keep myself busy. Well, through that effort, I I created or coordinated an event called the Texas Music Jam, and it was down on Water Street in Corpus Christi, Texas, and we invited all these great country music artists to come in and sing. And so I was working with this group called the Downtown Management District, and the head of their committee was this girl named Diane DeCou. And Diane and I worked together on this event. And I was really kind of the freelance hired help to do it, but she was guiding it and supporting me in that effort. Well, she and I became good friends. And I had shared with her that, there might be a time where I might be interested in just going back to full-time work. Well, we talked about that kind of as an off the cuff conversation. Well, then suddenly she was working for Whataburger at the time, and an opening came open in the marketing department.
Okay.
She connects me to the person who's doing the interview. I go in and I do the interview, and long story short, they hire me. I would not be where I am if Diane had not made that introduction. I probably wouldn't even have known about the role, and I certainly it would have been harder to get an interview. But because of that introduction and because of that relationship and friendship I had with Diane, she thankfully, introduced me.
Yeah.
And so that was when I was, 32 years old,
Okay.
and new mom, like I said, two babies at home. And I go back to work. Then through that course, I met a lot of wonderful leaders there. But a couple of them in particular, Leonard and Preston, really helped me, and they became mentors. And Preston, for sure, took me kind of under his wing and really put me in rooms that I might not have gotten in otherwise, and invited me to meetings with senior leaders. And so through that, I learned and I grew, and I developed my own business acumen. And so he was a huge part of me learning and growing. Leonard taught me how to build relationships. Leonard was the funniest, coolest, kindest leader I think I've ever met and ever worked with. And I appreciated him for all of those times. And then, I went through, and the reason I say that Diane, I still am grateful for her, is later on, I stayed with the company for 20 years. But in 2009, after we had just relocated our headquarters and I'd relocated our family and I was married, I'd been married for 17 years, I found out my husband was having an affair. And at that time, I was on, long story, but I had to go on my own, right? It was me now. And had I not had the kind of job, career, and financial security at that time, I would have been in a real bind. And so I think about I think about those moments when you look back on it and you think, oh, thank God, you know, thank God I was in that position. Thank God I didn't just stay in that role as that, event planner. Thank God I made that leap. Thank God I met those people. So that helped me get through that time. Um, and I went on to, at that point when that happened, I was a director in the company. I went on to be a senior vice president of HR, communications, and culture. So again, the support around you when you're building your career and you're going through things like that, when you have good people around you and you're surrounded by a culture that cares, it's everything when you can get through those times. And I did. And then, long story short, I ended up meeting a wonderful man 12 years later. I swore off marriage for 12 years. But I tell people, I'm like, I had time, I need time to get over it. Plus I wanted to raise my children just by myself. And so anyway, I got through all that. And then I met a wonderful guy in 2017 and we got married in 2020.
Okay.
So he is my other, wow, what a shift. And he restored my faith in marriage and men and kindness and, partnership and all of that. So that is a lot of stuff, but I don't have one person. I think I have people for every season of my life that have moved me to where I need to be today. And now I have relationships with entrepreneurs that are helping me in this new venture of entrepreneurship and learning and growing and trying to figure that out, And I just am grateful for all of it, even the bad stuff, even the people that were in my life that moved me out of something that maybe was my comfort zone. I'm grateful for that too, because in hindsight, it is better. It is better. My life is so good. And I'm grateful for it all. But yeah, these relationships are just such a huge part of careers and growing in life,
Well, and you just made some amazing analogies, and like so like the gal that made the connection where you just got to go right in for that interview, and she knew the right people. And I don't know what she told them about you, but she said, she just told them about you and they trusted her. And they're like, all right, we trust you. Yep. We're going to have a conversation. And so you just kind of go to the front of the line kind of a thing.
That's it.
And, that's kind of, I learned years ago the power of right relationships, the power of just honoring those relationships and taking care of people, doing what we say we're going to do and making good on our word. And my goodness, I got relationships spanning back 28 years because of that. Yeah. And, and I look, I'm thinking of right now something that just happened in the last week here with a friend of mine who's a venture capital guy. I've known him for 13 years. This gentleman he's a billionaire. If he never made another dollar in his life, it wouldn't even matter. And yet I have become such close friends with him. And I get to be his conduit of trust. And so he knows that anybody I bring into his world, if I suggest, hey, Isaac, you should talk with so-and-so, he will take that call. Yeah. And the thing is, by the same token, I do have people saying to me, man, could you connect me with that guy? I'm like, no, you're not ready for that connection.
You're not ready for that table.
And my allegiance is to Isaac. He's the one that I've got the 13-year relationship with.
That's it.
I will not do anything that would risk damaging the relationship that we have had. And, when we treat relationships that way and we place that much value on relationships, people know it. People know it. And it will move mountains and open doors so doggone fast, it'll make your head spin for somebody who's never experienced it. But yet in our world, it's totally the norm. That is totally the norm. That's how it's done. And
That's so
you
good.
talk about your husband, and you know, I was raised like you. My mom and dad were married until my dad passed away, and he did pass away from cancer at an early
Mm,
age. I
I'm
was only
sorry.
16 when my dad passed
Mm,
away. But I never once saw my parents argue. I'm
that's
sure they did,
awesome.
but it wasn't in front of my brother and I. It was
Yeah,
not in front of us.
it's so good.
And so in my mind, that's what a relationship was supposed to be.
Hmm.
And so I thought, well, once you get married, you're just married for life. That's how it is.
That's what
And
I
so
thought.
when I got married and 4 years later was divorced, I'm
Mm,
like, boy, you must have really messed up to get here. I mean,
mm,
I
mhm.
placed a lot of it on me. Now it took two.
That's
So,
it.
but
Yeah.
and then when I met my wife now, Lisa, she had been a single mom for 10 years, and she was like you for
I
10 years. She was
relate.
like, man, I'm done with this. I'm just like,
Yes.
and by the time she met me, she was open to this, but on our second date, she just laid it down, and I remember her telling me, she goes, look, I'm just gonna let you know right now where I'm coming from. And if that ain't you, it's totally cool. But I don't want to date. I don't want to. And she goes, I am looking for a man who wants to be in a relationship, not because he
Mm,
has to be, because he wants to be. And I want to be with a man who wants to be with me. And so if you're
yeah.
just looking to casually date, then hey, that's totally cool. Go do your thing.
Right.
But just let me know right now because that ain't my thing. And I'm
That's
like,
it.
well, dang, here's a woman who knows what she wants.
Yeah.
And it has been the most amazing relationship. And we
Yeah.
we met in '03, got married in '05, and heck, in 2 months. So we will celebrate our 19th wedding anniversary.
No, that's so awesome. And
And
congrats on that.
so
I think you're right. I think that, people, again, they attract or repel
yeah,
what they want in their lives. And I don't know if she has had children going into your relationship,
she
but
did. She had 4 kids. Yes.
there you go.
Yeah.
So we're kind of mama bears when it comes to protecting our babies. And mine weren't babies, but they were my kids. And I just wanted to protect them and I wanted to make sure the right people were around them. So again, I'm not inviting everybody to the table. I'm inviting the kind of person that I want in their life too. And I knew that. So that was an important aspect of getting clear on that. And sometimes you do have to take that time and realize, like, what did I do wrong in the other relationship, and where did I go wrong, and what happened, and what can I do better in the next one. And unfortunately, I'm a slow learner, I guess, because it took me 12 years to figure all that out. But I mean, it's so much easier. This relationship is so
Yeah.
easy. And
Yeah.
I think when you're young, you're trying so hard to be right all the time and to win the argument or to win the day or whatever. And you get older and you're just like, you know what, it's all good.
Yeah.
Whatever. If you
You
want to
just
go
you're
hunting,
like,
go hunting. If you want to do this, go do this. I don't
that's
care. I'm
right.
going to be hanging out over here. And so I just think there's such an ease to relationships once you really feel confident with yourself and know what you're about. And
Yeah.
I just think it's a lot easier. So,
I think you figure out that, like, you can pick your battles, and like this isn't worth being a battle over, and I know, it's
exactly.
been very interesting because the 4 older kids, they're all married, out of the home. They all but two, one of them have kids of their own. We got 6 grandkids,
Yeah. Yeah.
and and all the 4 older kids, they all call me dad, and
Yeah. Awesome.
it is just, I love the relationship that I have with them. And
That's so
then,
good.
and Lisa started talking about, well, we should have kids of our
Hmm.
own too, because yeah. And I'm gonna say,
Hmm.
oh, I'm good, and she goes, yeah, but you know what, you should really experience what it's like to be a dad,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so we did. And Brock was born in '08, and Ellie was born in 2010. And oh my gosh, Brock just turned 16 in April. And now
Wow.
he's driving. Now I hardly ever see the guy, and I'm just like, I miss him because I'm like, he's gone doing his own thing. He's got this newfound freedom, and
Yes.
I'm like, where did the 16 years go?
It's so hard because they're your little shadows when they're little
Yeah,
and they just want to go. I always tell my son Garrett, I used to say when he was little, I'd say, hey, do you want to go? And he'd go, yes. And I go, I haven't told you where we're going yet. I just want to go. And,
Yeah.
and that's how he was. It didn't matter where I was going. He wanted to go with me. And, and then when they get older and they hit high school and they have friends and they have activities and they have all the things to do, you start to feel like they're just slipping away and you just feel like, man, what happened? Why aren't they closer now? And why don't they hang out with me anymore? Why do they seem so angry all the time? And and then, everyone told me this and I did not believe them. I was like, no, that's probably not going to be me. But they go away to school or they go away to do other things, and all of a sudden those phone calls home get more frequent.
Mhm.
And the next thing you know, they're coming home to visit. And the next thing you know, they're wanting to hang out. And all of a sudden, that relationship that you had with them as a child comes back. And now it's this awesome adult, and it's fun. You can hang out with each other in a new way. And I talk about something I appreciate. That it is probably the one thing that mattered to me most my whole life was I wanted my children to have what I had. And if I couldn't give it to them with the marriage situation, I wanted to give it to them myself. And so I took them on vacations, and we had carpet picnics on Valentine's Day, where a carpet picnic, by the way, is me bringing home pizza, lighting candles, laying a blanket down on the living room carpet, and eating pizza with them on Valentine's Day. So, and other holidays, right? It became a tradition. And so we created our own way of connecting and our own table, if you will, even if it was a blanket on the floor eating pizza. But it was important to me that I had a good relationship with my kids, no matter what they were going through.
Yeah.
And in loving them through those moments where you want to like just thump them on the head and be like, what is the matter with you? I have been a good mother to you,
Yeah.
and
Right.
they're acting like fools.
Yeah.
But they just come back. And so if there's a parent out there, and I just want to throw that encouragement out there, they do come back. And all of a sudden, you just got to keep loving them through the times when they're not very lovable. You
Yeah.
love them anyway.
Well, Pam, I want to thank you for taking the time to have this conversation today. And for anybody who's like, man, Kevin, I really like Pam and the way that she shows up. How can, if they want to follow you, how can they follow you? Any website, any info we can give them and include?
Yeah. Yeah. The easiest way to connect with me is go to my website. It's Pam Nemec at pamnemec.com, NEMEC. And I offer a free call. So if you just want to chat, if you want to find out more about me or find out what I do, or if I can help you in any way, just schedule it right there. And it's a free call, just to chit chat. I also have a few free tools on there too that might pop up as you're scrolling through the website. So I've got a free tool talking about how to connect and how to create connection in your company. So all kinds of tips and tools in there too. So speaking of relationships and connection, that ebook is in there, and it's free. So
Awesome. Awesome. Well, Pam, once again, thank you so much for taking the time to have this conversation today. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate you. And I am excited to get this out there and share it with a lot of other entrepreneurs. So thank you.
Well, I think what you're doing in this podcast is spreading a lot of goodness in the world. So thank you. And I appreciate you thinking I was qualified to come on and talk about everything that I care about. So I appreciate the platform and appreciate you, and hope we can stay in touch and keep our relationship going.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thanks again.